The Sun Devils defense is almost identical to last year, which means they're going to pummel their opponents in 2025.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Richie Bradshaw, your expert, your guide, your friend for all things Sun Devils, from the gridiron to the hardwood and everything in between. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. On today's agenda, defense going to win a lot of games this year. The reasons why: we're going to start with the defensive line, and why you're not going to run on them, just ask Texas. Then we're going to talk about the depth all over the place, including linebacker and safety, before we talk about the return of key veterans and some potential breakout stars. Before we get started, thanks to each and every single one of you for making Locked On Sun Devils your first listen of the day, and a shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. So this defense, man, it's pretty good. I don't know if you realize how much is returning, but it's almost everyone. Now, there are some big losses, to be sure. Shamari Simmons, massive loss. Safety, corner, run stuffer, Mr. Do-It-All. Caleb McCullough, one of your best linebackers from last year, someone I have called the unsung hero of 2024. He's gone. Jeff Clark, critical defensive lineman, is gone. LT Welsh, who was a really good number 2 or number 3 corner for you, is gone. Some other guys are gone as well. It's not a defense that is 100% from last year, but it is pretty darn close. You got your top 3 guys: at edge rusher, defensive line, linebacker, corner, safety. Did I just name every position? I think I did. It's looking pretty good. But of all those groups, I don't think any is as strong as the defensive line, the interior specifically. ASU got some big boys up front. CJ Fite, true junior, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the Big 12. And he's starting to get some praise and respect and notoriety as well. You'll find that there are more than a few people who are aware of CJ Fite and how good he is. But he's got some nice partners in crime, too. Jacob Rich Kongaika is back for his senior year. He was a very overlooked contributor for the line last year. Zach Swanson is back. Zach Swanson, when healthy, is one of your better pass rushers from the interior of the line. They added some guys. My'Keil Gardner is the most notable, who is going to, as long as he's healthy, turn into that 4th defensive tackle that ASU showed they love to rotate. And we're going to talk about rotating a little bit later on the show. But ASU really liked its defensive tackle depth last year. And they, once again, had that defensive tackle depth this year. It's all sorts of good stuff that's going on right now. And they are going to eliminate the run game. Eliminated. They were one of the best run defenses all year in the Big 12. I know they finished number 1, but sometimes that's inflated by some games. ASU did a great job snuffing out the run. You can ask Texas, the Longhorns, with 2 NFL running backs, with Quintrevion Wisner and Jaden Blue. Less than 50 rushing yards were allowed by the Sun Devils. By the way, that's including or taking away sack yards. Less than 50. They absolutely snuffed out the run. Texas could not do anything. They forced the game into Quinn Ewers' hands. Now, unfortunately, Quinn was prepared for that, and they end up winning the game. But they took away an entire portion of a high-powered offense and kept that game close. Was beyond impressive. But ASU's defensive line, that's where this is going to start for repeating your success against the run. CJ Fite and Jacob Rich Kongaika are the big men that are returning for the group they're going to be your main run stuffers. They are over 300 pounds now. That was a huge criticism that was given to ASU's defensive line. They don't have a 300-pounder. Okay, well, they have a handful of them now. And those two in particular, Kongaika and Fite, are going to be the ones who are responsible for plugging up the middle and forcing everything outside. That's where ASU had a lot of success last year defending the run, was that outside containment, because guys like Keyshawn Elliott, who is still with the team, and Shamari Simmons, who isn't, were able to flow to the perimeter and keep everything in front of them, because the defensive tackle spot was just suffocating the interior. There was not anything that opposing offenses were able to do successfully on a game-to-game, down-to-down, drive-to-drive basis. It simply was not there because of the way the defensive line played. And you're bringing that group back. You're bringing it back. I'm really interested with My'Keil Gardner, too. Local kid, I believe he went to Centennial. Don't quote me on that. But as a big dude, there's a lot of potential and upside there with him. He just has not been healthy. If he's healthy, there is some pass rushing upside there. There's just flat out brute strength that's going to make him an anchor against the run game as well. And again, this all plays into how ASU's defense is just going to take down and eliminate opposing run games. It's going to be on a week-to-week basis. And ASU is going to face some good football teams this year. They're going to face some good running backs this year. So they're going to need this defensive line to be able to shut down things the way they do. But it's also going to be important that they force everything outside. We just talked about that and how that led to so much success for the Sun Devils. Well, it needs to happen again. ASU needs its defensive line to force plays to the outside, to force your linebackers to go east to west, the running backs to go east to west. That pursuit is going to be a lot easier for the linebackers than it is the running backs to try and make something happen. That's where they found so much success last year. You basically have that replicated with Fite back, with Swanson back, with Kongaika back. Really interested with My'Keil Gardner. Is this going to be the year that Blazin Lonawong gets on the field? I don't know. Ramar Williams has been bulking up as well to start playing on the interior. There's options here for ASU to fancy. There's some younger guys. I'm a big fan of this group, and you could potentially create a stonewall, a steel curtain that just flat out says, sorry, you're not running this way. You're going to have to go somewhere else. You got the gap fillers. You got guys that can take on multi-teams. CJ Fite is going to command two guys on every down, and he's still going to get his job done. It's just who he is. It's just who he is, man. Brian Ward, defensive coordinator, he knows how good this front is, and he puts a lot of trust in those guys to be able to do their job. And they have rewarded that trust that he has placed in them. Is they do what they're supposed to do. So Ward essentially says, all right, sounds good. You do your thing, and let's move on from there. So I'm a big fan of the defensive line, and I'm not the only one who is a big fan of the defensive line. Now, what we will need to see this year is generating the sacks, because that was not something that ASU did last year at all. They were not averaging 2 sacks a game. Their leader was Clayton Smith with 4.5 sacks. And that is not going to do it. And I don't know if the defense is going to really take a dramatic step forward when it comes to its pass rush. There's good players. Prince Dorbaugh, when healthy, is really, really good. Clayton Smith has shown to be a well-rounded guy. Elijah O'Neal has the talent. Justin Wadley has the talent. I mentioned Zach Swanson from the interior could potentially be someone to penetrate, get in the backfield, and get sacks. But that's kind of the area where you're going to need the defense to figure itself out a little bit, because you don't have that as of now. You didn't have it last year. You certainly didn't have it the first year of Kenny Dillingham. They've got to start generating sacks. I believe that sacks sometimes can be an overrated statistic. I love pressures. How does it break down the way the offensive play is going to run? Well, last year it just wasn't good enough. ASU did have plenty of pressure, but they did not get the sacks. That's got to be able to convert this year. The interior of the line, look, am I asking for CJ Fite to get 10 sacks? No, not at all. Am I asking for the group to get 10 sacks? Probably not. That'd be cool, but that's going to be around them. So if I can just have the interior guys focus on what they do best, and that's stuffing the run, forcing everything outside, eating blocks, keeping jerseys clean, perfect. That's what I want to see. The sacks, that's going to come from everywhere else. ASU has a lot of depth on this defense, though. Expect a ton of rotation. We're talking about that next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's talk about our friends over at Monarch Money, because if you ever wish that managing your money felt easier, with Monarch, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. Like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. If there's a specific category that you're trying to eliminate or that you are trying to build on, Monarch Money is going to help you be able to do that. If you are sharing your finances with someone else, Monarch can help you stay on the same page. So if this is the time that you're trying to get serious about managing your money, then you got to check out our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNCollege for half off your first year. Thanks as always for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils and making us your first listen of the day. And a shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. ASU has a lot of depth on this defensive line, and that's the thing that's going to make them so deadly this upcoming season. They've got a lot of depth on that defensive line. They got a lot of depth at linebacker. They got a lot of depth at corner. They got a lot of depth at safety. And they have a lot of guys who do multiple things. That's really where a lot of this comes down to, is the fact that ASU will be able to rotate and keep guys fresh. And by doing that, they are going to increase the opportunity for their playmakers to make plays. Because making sure that everyone is able to get a breather in is going to make sure no one gets too fatigued, that nobody is overwhelmed. These things matter a lot when you are trying to play good defense. Yeah, you can have all-American starters, and that's a huge deal. But when they have to come off the field, if you go from Ray Lewis to Richie Bradshaw, that is not great. Because there's a chance that until Ray gets back on the field, that the opponents are going to target Richie, and Richie's going to get exposed a little bit. Not going to lie, these knees aren't what they once were, and they certainly weren't great once upon a time. But ASU doesn't have that problem. We already talked about defensive tackle. I mentioned edge rusher. What about linebacker? Keyshawn Elliott was all conference. Well, he's got a few guys next to him. Jordan Crook, who was one of the starters down the end of the stretch. He's pretty athletic. He finds his way into the backfield. Cyrus Fiaseu was a starter at the beginning of the season. He's a reliable defender. Tate Romney, he was top 5 in tackles 2 years ago for the Sun Devils. He was injured for a lot of last year, so he was behind the depth chart quite a bit. But when he's on the field, he's a reliable football player. Got younger guys like Martell Hughes that I'm looking forward to seeing out there. There's a lot of hype for guys like Tristan Bacon and Isaiah Iosefu. Let's see how all that comes together. There's a lot here to work with for the Sun Devils defensively. in their front seven, but they've got the depth in the secondary too. You have a phenomenal corner duo. There we go. Between Javan Robinson and Keith Abney. They are going to be chef's kiss. The things that they'll be able to accomplish together. They can play zone, they can play man, they can create turnovers. They each had 3 interceptions last year. And ASU did take a nice step forward with creating turnovers. And those two were big-time contributors. They're back. It's another year of them being on the outside, of them learning the same defense with the same positional coach, with the same safeties behind them. They're going to do some good work this year. They got depth behind them too. So you lose Shamari Simmons, who played that nickel safety role. You lose LT Welsh. Welsh is a really under-the-radar loss for the Sun Devils. You lost him for very controversial reasons. It's unfortunate, but these things happen. But he had such a unique role as your third safety, not your nickel or safety, not your nickel corner, but your third corner. It was a very different role. It's not really what you're used to seeing. You hear third corner, you think inside guy. That was not LT. He was still outside, but also not really like a dime player. Like he just flat out was corner 3. He just came on the field and did his job. And he also created turnovers. He had a handful of interceptions too. He had a pick 6. He's gone. You have to replace him. That's not an easy replacement, except that ASU has options. Rodney Bimage. You need to remember that name because he killed it in spring ball 2024. Unfortunately, did not see the field last year, but you saw the talent, the potential, the upside. You were like, okay, there's something to work with. Then you see other guys too. By the way, it continued for Bimage. He looked just as good this past spring. There's a chance he finds the field a lot this year. There's other guys too. You still have Chris Johnson Jr., who I do think is going to play a little more safety than corner, but he's an option. Tony Lewis and Cuba, don't sleep on him. He's an option. ASU's got the depth at corner that they are returning. But they also added guys in free agency. An example, they add not Keon. Oh my goodness. Let's start with Kendrick Breedlove and Nyland Green. There we go. Nyland. I think I was combining their 2 names, like Kylan or something. I don't know. Neither here nor there. But you add those guys, both from Purdue. Breedlove will play slot, and he's very similar to Shamari, where he's got kind of the safety instincts. And then Nyland looks like corner 3. He looks very similar to what LT Welsh provided for you last year. Sign me up. So you've got the options you brought in through the transfer portal. You also have the options that currently exist on the team. There's some good-looking stuff here for the Sun Devils. Big fan of what's going on. And I think that we're going to see much better success than some may think when it comes to replacing a player that meant as much to ASU as Shamari Simmons did, or an underrated player like LT Welsh. That secondary has the depth. Also want to mention Adrian Wilson, Boogie Wilson, whichever one you want to refer to him as. He is coming in as another safety option for the Sun Devils, and he will be in competition for that nickel role, the same way that Shamari Simmons had that role, the same way Kendrick Breedlove will be competing, and Montana Warren too. Wow, look at that. Look at all that depth. It's almost like ASU's ready for whatever's going to happen. So, yeah, you're replacing Shamari Simmons. You got really good options to fill that hole. You're replacing Nyland Green. You got really good options to fill that hole. You lose 2 guys up front, in particular with Jeff Clark and Caleb McCullough, but they were already deep in a rotation regardless. These were legitimate holes lost with Shamari and with LT, and ASU has them covered. And then at safety, they're returning. They're returning both guys. Xavion Alford is back. Miles Rouser, Ghost Rouser is back. There's a lot of depth on this defense. There's a lot of rotation, which we have come to know is the cup of tea for Brian Ward. That's the way he wants to run things. Lots of rotation. They're going to be able to do that. They got a lot of veterans too, but a lot of breakout candidates as well. Coming up next, this is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk about our friends now over at Game Time. We've all been there, logging on, waiting forever to get your concert tickets, go on, you're waiting to go on sale, and then boom, they're gone. They're gone, right as you thought you were going to get them. And it should be about making memories, not being stressed out when you're ticket shopping. And that's where Game Time comes into play. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices will drop the closer it gets to showtime. You can save up to 60% off their killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endlessly scrolling, trying to find the best deal, Game Time has zone deals with the best seats for your section. Do you want to check and make sure it's the view you want? The app will give you a panoramic seat of your view, so there's no surprises when you get there. Game Time is going to show you the price you pay up front. There's no hidden fees. And if you're worried about what happens if plans change, the Game Time guarantee has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying your concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thanks, as always, for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils, making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every day. All right, so if there's nothing more important than having a strong core up front for your defensive line, for your linebackers, for your corners, for your safeties, for your unit entirely, it's having veterans. The guys who have been there, done that, the guys who are familiar with the scheme, familiar with the team, familiar with their teammates, those guys are going to make or break the success more often than not for your defense. That's one of the reasons why Georgia has had such good defenses for such a long time. Look at the multi-year starters that they have out there. I mean, this goes back to their consecutive championship run a handful of years ago. But Georgia constantly has great players who play multiple years. And then guess what? The guys right behind them are still getting on the field. So when they step in, they've got experience. That's one of the reasons why I love how much ASU is rotating their players in, because they're getting that experience. So sure, Zach Swanson was your fourth defensive tackle last year. He's going to be your third, maybe like 2A, 2B with Jacob Kongaika. But that's a big deal. Jordan Crook and Cyrus Fiaseu became heavily involved in the team last year. So when Caleb McCullough left, they're going to be able to step into that role. There's a lot of guys that were getting prepared behind the scenes that are going to be good. But now look at the veterans on this team. Xavion Alford, yeah, he's only going into his second year playing with the team. This is his third year with the program. Remember, he was forced to sit out in 2023 because of the NCAA's two-time transfer policy. CJ Fite has been a starter since he was about halfway through his freshman year. He's going into year 3. He's still back with this team. Tate Romney's been with this team for 3 years. He's back. Keith Abney has been with this team for 3 years. He's back. Montana Warren has been with this team for 3 years. He's back. Clayton Smith has been with this team for 3 years. He's back. Prince Dorba, I mean, I could just go on and on and on. There's a lot of returning guys. Some guys that are in starting roles, some guys that are in rotational roles that are maintaining big roles, that are maintaining veteran leadership roles for the team. Even guys that are returning for just their second year in the desert had big roles last year. Keyshawn Elliott, one of the biggest players on defense, is going into his second year. Miles Rouser, Javan Robinson, basically the entire linebacker core that is not Tate Romney. There's a lot of guys that have at least a year experience, some of them who have been here since the start of the Kenny Dillingham era. some of these guys who have been developed behind the scenes and are going to be finding bigger roles. It starts with that, man. Having the guys on defense that know what they're doing. Yeah, that's big. That's huge even. I love it. I love what we're seeing right now for the way the ASU is going to be able to run this defense. There's just so much there to play with. So many veterans, but there's breakout kids too. Now I can sit here and talk about the typical breakout guys. Keith Abney, Javan Robinson, they're breakout candidates. Maybe Clayton Smith's a breakout candidate in his third year. He's put together some solid numbers. I would love to throw Tate Romney's name out there, but let's talk about the guys that no one is really mentioning that could end up having big roles. On the defensive line, I said My'Keil Gardner, and I mentioned potentially Blazin Lonawong. I would not be surprised if those guys got a lot of time on the field this year because ASU would like to rotate their defensive tackles once again. Edge rusher, you've got your top three guys. You've got Clayton Smith, Prince Dorbaugh, and Elijah O'Neal. Keep an eye out for Justin Wadley. Wadley was not able to find the field much last year for a variety of reasons. That's not going to be the case this year. He is going to be one of your top rotational defensive ends. Don't be surprised if he breaks out a little bit. Linebacker, I'm looking at Martell Hughes. Martell Hughes was a true freshman last year and saw the field a lot. And ASU's rotating in their linebackers. Tate Romney is likely stepping in to the role that Caleb McCullough had last year, so there's your top four linebackers. Martell was still finding the field, and he was a good player on special teams too. Keep that in mind. Martell Hughes is someone I've got my eye on. And again, I've had the attention brought to me for some of the freshmen as well. Keep an eye out on them, but Martell Hughes, someone I'm looking out for. At corner, I've said Rodney Bimage. I'll continue to say Rodney Bimage because I think he's going to be the biggest breakout star for the Sun Devils, period. He didn't get on the field last year, and yet I truly think there's a possibility he pushes for legitimate starting time. Like Keith Abney and Javan Robinson are going to have to play their best on a week-to-week basis, not just because ASU needs them to, but because if they start slipping up, Rodney Bimage might be able to slide in there and steal their job. He is that good. And the fact that he decided to stay with the program despite not finding the field last year is a big deal. That's a big deal. There's some exciting stuff that's being built right now with this defense. Safety, it's Montana Warren. If you've listened to this podcast for years, first of all, shout out to you guys. But second of all, this is a pro Montana Warren podcast. He looked so good as a freshman before he broke his leg, missed most of his freshman year in 2023. Looked pretty good last year. His first opportunity in a starting role against Texas, 2 plays right down the field for a touchdown. He was responsible for that touchdown. After that, it looked like he just flushed it right out of his system and started playing good football again. Montana Warren's a good player. They're looking for someone to replace Shamari Simmons. There's a lot of guys. Montana Warren might be the guy to replace him. There's a lot of special kids on this defense. There's a lot of high upside potential from the kids we haven't seen yet and from the veteran returners. We have got to see more sacks. That's just a non-negotiable. ASU needs to do it. If they don't do it, they are not going to win enough football games this year. You have to take down the quarterback. Pressures are not enough. Pressures can be very important. It still has to result in turnovers or sacks. ASU got better with turning the ball over last year. But you still have to be able to bring down the quarterback in that place. Brian Ward has a massive expectation for himself in the defenses that he coaches. 40 sacks, 30 turnovers every year. I think there was 2 defenses that did it last year. It was Texas and Notre Dame, if I remember correctly. That's not easy to do. Are they going to do it this year? Probably not. They'd have to almost double their sack production. If you added their sack production from the last 2 years, I don't think it's 40 sacks. So that'd be a massive step up. But we did just see a really nice step up in turnovers. ASU in their first year with Kenny, 2023, didn't have a turnover until game 4. Last year, they had 3 turnovers in their first game. Stuff clearly changes. And maybe we do see Clayton Smith in his 3rd year turn into a sack master. It's not out of the realm of possibilities, but ASU is going to need that this year. That has to change. Otherwise, though, I mean, I look at this defense and I'm like, I don't see anything that really makes me nervous. Even the sack production, I wouldn't say makes me nervous. It's got to happen. But I don't look at it and I'm like, oh, man, if they don't sack the quarterback, this defense can't win games. This defense can win games. They can win a lot of games. They can. That defensive line is stout. That linebacker core is insane. You got 2 elite number 1 corners. You got 2 star safeties. There are NFL players on this defense. And you have one of the best coaching staffs that the Sun Devils have assembled for the defensive side of the football in a long time. I am big on this defense this year. I hope you guys are too, because they are going to win games for the Sun Devils this year. There may be a game where the offense just can't do enough, and ASU is going to win 13-10. And it's because of what that defense will be able to achieve. What do you guys think about the defense? Can the defense win games by itself? Who's going to be the breakout player for the defense? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrad36. The podcast is there at LO_Sun Devils. Thanks, as always, for tuning in to Locked On Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to the everydayers who are here every single day. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your shows, and you will get an update when we post new content. Thanks, as always, guys, for tuning in. There are a lot of crossover editions of Locked On Sun Devils that are coming up this week as we sit down with the hosts from Locked On Sun Devils, the hosts from Locked On Sun Devils opponents, I should say, and get to know who we're facing this year. I'll check you guys out next time, though. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.